Imagine a world where entire mountain peaks were sliced flat as if by some colossal hand, where jungle-covered cities rose in perfect alignment with the stars, and where immense statues, serpent-shadowed pyramids, and forgotten kingdoms emerged, yet left behind almost no clear trace of who commanded their construction or what purpose they served. Why did so many ancient cultures across Mexico reshape the land itself with such astonishing precision? What belief or obsession pushed them to carve signs and patterns we can observe but still cannot fully translate? To raise temples no king ever inscribed his name upon, and to encode the heavens into stone as though transmitting messages meant for an audience beyond time. And if these civilizations were distinct in language, art, and ritual, why do their mysteries whisper the same unanswered questions across centuries? Why does each discovery lead only to deeper uncertainty, as if the builders wanted their secrets to outlast history itself? Keep watching, because the further we descend into these ruins, the more impossible, strange, and mesmerizing these megastructures become. El Tajín. El Tajín lies across the rolling lowlands of Veracruz, where warm, humid air settles beneath scattered palms, and the terrain shifts gradually from wooded ridges to open stretches of cultivated fields. In this landscape shaped by rain, wind, and seasonal rhythm, the ancient city emerges as a place where architecture itself seems to record cycles of time. Niches, stepped terraces, and layered facades repeat like a measured pulse across its buildings, giving the city a visual cadence unlike any other in ancient Mesoamerica, as though its builders sought to translate ritual repetition and cosmological cycles into the geometry of stone. At the center of this expression stands the Pyramid of the Niches, a seven-tiered monument whose more than 300 recessed alcoves pierce its surface with extraordinary regularity. Their meaning remains a subject of scholarly debate. Some propose calendrical significance, others interpret them as markers of lineage, political authority, or cosmic order. Yet the absence of inscriptions leaves interpretation suspended, rich in possibility but restrained by silence. Still, the pyramid's harmonious proportions, and the way light and shadow sweep across its niches as the sun moves overhead, suggest a structure engineered not only for form but for spectacle, ritual, and the theatrical use of space. Around this core, broad plazas open like ceremonial stages, while the raised platforms and multi-leveled terraces of Tajín Chico ascend in deliberate sequence. Colonnades and stairways hint at administrative or elite residential functions, though the partial preservation of upper architecture and variation in masonry styles complicate efforts to reconstruct political hierarchy with certainty. In many cases, architectural prominence itself becomes the clearest indicator of status and governance. El Tajín is especially distinguished by the remarkable number of ball courts, more than a dozen distributed throughout the city. Carved panels depict players adorned in elaborate regalia, mythic beings, and scenes imbued with sacrificial imagery, rendered in dynamic relief that blends movement with symbolism. These carvings offer some of the most detailed narrative art in the region, yet even they resist definitive interpretation. Without accompanying inscriptions, scholars rely on comparative iconography to infer meaning, whether cosmic renewal, royal legitimation, or ritual drama enacted in stone. The panels of the South Ball Court, particularly vivid, show sequences of figures interacting with supernatural entities, perhaps episodes from mythic cycles once understood by all, now only glimpsed through fractured visual memory. Archaeological evidence demonstrates that El Tajín evolved gradually. Early constructions of earth and perishable material were replaced over generations by enduring stone foundations, marking a period of rising political influence and the development of a more integrated urban design. Plazas, shrines, ceremonial platforms, and elite compounds were carved into natural slopes, forming a city that worked with the land rather than flattening it. Yet growth was uneven. Certain districts flourished with building activity, while others experienced abandonment, leaving gaps that do not align neatly with known regional events or external pressures. Ceramics, obsidian blades, marine shell ornaments, and imported goods testify to wide trade networks extending across the Gulf Coast, into highland regions, and possibly beyond. But their distribution across the city reveals social differentiation. Ceremonial precincts yield rich offerings, whereas domestic zones provide only scattered remains. These patterns imply inequality and shifting access to prestige goods, though the lack of well-preserved household deposits limits precise reconstruction of daily life. Environmental research highlights the significance of water in El Tajin's development. Heavy rainfall and seasonal storms shaped architecture as much as ritual thought. Stepped terraces, drainage systems, and elevated platforms appear as much defensive measures against erosion and flooding as symbolic spatial design. Yet the relationship between environmental adaptation and architectural innovation remains interpretive due to incomplete excavation and the continued presence of unexcavated mounds beneath vegetation. Pigment traces on walls and reliefs indicate that buildings were once vividly painted, reds, blues, yellows, transforming plazas into brilliant environments now faded to memory, leaving only faint residues for scholars to imagine. As the city reached its peak, new stylistic elements arose: sloping talud walls, elaborate cornices, decorated friezes, all markers of a unique artistic identity that flourished intensely but briefly. This florescence was followed by reduced construction and eventual decline. Causes remain uncertain. Shifts in trade, internal restructuring, environmental challenges, or broader regional dynamics have all been proposed, yet none conclusively proven. Much of the city later succumbed to returning forest growth until modern archaeology cleared plazas and pyramids, though wide portions remain buried, detectable only through subtle topographic changes or remote sensing imagery, hinting that El Tajin's full scale may still lie hidden. At sunset, when light brushes the pyramid of the niches and each recess deepens into shadow, the rhythmic geometry becomes almost musical, a visual beat across stone. The silence of the ball courts, once alive with ritual performance, contrasts with carved panels worn yet still sharp enough to evoke movement, contest, sacrifice, and cosmic storytelling enacted without words. Vegetation now drapes platforms and edges of plazas, softening sharp lines but also lending an aura of suspended time, half revealed, half reclaimed by nature. El Tajin stands today as a city articulated through architecture rather than text, its worldview expressed in repetition, shadow, and carved narrative. It reveals engineering mastery and symbolic insight, while withholding the logic that once united them. In the tension between what is seen and what remains ambiguous, the site endures as a place where form is precise yet meaning open, an ancient metropolis whose humid courts and layered terraces invite contemplation of a civilization that thrived on rhythm, ritual, and the interplay of visibility and mystery. Teotihuacan. In the elevated basin of central Mexico, where the morning light drifts slowly across the terrain, Teotihuacan rises in a geometry of profound silence. Its wide avenue and towering pyramids form a constellation of stone that feels intentional yet unfathomable, as though the city were shaped by a long-lost logic whose echo survives only in the angles and alignments that have held their precision for centuries. The Pyramid of the Sun dominates this vast landscape with a mass so immense that its sheer presence prompts questions about how labor could have been organized in a society that left no explicit record of its rulers. Its foundations rest above a natural cave reshaped into a four-lobed chamber, hinting at origins linked to mythic geography and the cyclical rebirth that governed both earth and sky. Nearby, the Pyramid of the Moon ascends in harmonious proportion to the contours of Cerro Gordo, mirroring the mountain in a gesture that suggests veneration for the surrounding terrain. Offerings buried beneath its construction, obsidian blades, greenstone figures, and animal remains, reveal ceremonies arranged with meticulous symmetry, forming a ritual language whose meaning remains only partially understood. Along the Avenue of the Dead, multi-room apartment compounds expose traces of a diverse population. Artisans shaping obsidian cores into blades sharper than steel, painters covering plaster walls with vivid depictions of jaguars, birds, and masked beings, and merchants transporting goods along trade networks that stretched from distant coasts to the Maya world. Despite this complexity, the city's collective identity overshadows any evidence of individual authority, forcing scholars to infer its governance from the consistency of its architecture rather than from inscriptions or royal portraits found elsewhere in Mesoamerica. Within the citadel, the feathered serpent pyramid stands as one of its earliest and most enigmatic monuments. Its facade was once covered with rows of carved serpent heads emerging from undulating bodies set among seashell motifs, possibly alluding to creation narratives or celestial realms. Mass burials beneath its platforms reveal a ceremonial intensity that blends devotion, spectacle, and political power in ways still not fully deciphered. Traces of mica in certain structures, canals redirected across the valley, and the unwavering orientation of the urban grid, slightly offset from true north yet repeated with perfect consistency, suggest an advanced grasp of the environment, available resources, and cosmic cycles. Still, the underlying reasoning behind these choices lingers between practical engineering and symbolic intention. Excavations uncover layers of construction, showing how temples were rebuilt again and again, each phase enveloping the previous one in a palimpsest of architectural memory. Beneath certain plazas lie sealed corridors and unexplored voids, hinting at earlier foundations or ritual chambers intentionally hidden from view, as if the city's meaning unfolded on levels both above and below the earth. Even the distribution of foreign pottery and isotopic signatures in human remains reveal a multicultural metropolis where people from distant regions lived in distinct quarters, yet contributed to a unified urban project that maintained cohesion despite demographic variety. Environmental studies record eras of abundance interrupted by droughts, and while the city adapted for many generations, signs of burning in some areas and gradual abandonment in others suggest a decline that unfolded unevenly, shaped by environmental, social, or political forces that left no single defining trace. Today, walking through the site, the absence of inscriptions becomes its own quiet puzzle. For a city that once influenced distant regions left almost no names, doctrines, or narrative accounts. What remains instead are alignments that may reference solar movements, the setting of the Pleiades, or agricultural cycles, each interpretation grounded in evidence, yet never wholly conclusive. At dusk, as the pyramids cast long shadows over the open plazas, Teotihuacan feels less like the ruin of a vanished empire and more like a deliberate expression of cosmic order shaped around principles that slipped beyond the historical record. Its silence forms a boundary between what can be measured and what must be inferred. And in the enduring interplay between architectural precision, economic sophistication, ritual complexity, and the unresolved question of how such a vast city functioned without leaving a clear account of its leaders, Teotihuacan remains a monumental riddle, a landscape where certainty narrows into possibility, and the stones themselves seem to guard the final traces of an intention just beyond reach, waiting for patterns still buried in the soil to reveal one more fragment of its long-faded design. Palenque. In the dense forests of Chiapas, where mist gathers along ridgelines and the sound of running water threads through the undergrowth, Palenque rises from the jungle with an unexpected elegance. Its temples and palaces, built from finely cut limestone blocks, appear almost delicate when compared with the massive constructions of other Maya cities, as though its architects favored refinement rather than sheer scale, while still embedding layers of complexity into each vaulted passage and sculpted facade. The palace, spreading across a broad elevated terrace, contains an intricate network of courtyards, subterranean corridors, and a distinctive four-story tower whose windows may once have framed specific solar events, though the exact observational practices remain under active investigation. Beneath this extensive complex, channels divert the flow of natural springs, creating hydraulic systems that carry water beneath plazas and through stone-lined conduits, an engineering achievement that suggests both a sophisticated understanding of local hydrology and a symbolic association between controlling water and governing people. The Temple of the Inscriptions rises at the edge of the site, its stepped form concealing one of the most remarkable internal architectures of the ancient world. A sealed descending stairway leads deep into a funerary chamber, housing the sarcophagus of Kinich-Janab Pakal, its carved lid portraying a blend of dynastic legitimacy and cosmic symbolism. This interplay has fueled extensive scholarly debate, yet the meanings remain open to interpretation due to the layered, dense nature of Maya iconography. Surrounding this central precinct, additional monuments such as the temples of the sun, the cross, and the foliated cross preserve panels of glyphic text and relief carvings depicting rulers, deities, and mythic events, offering some of the most detailed historical records in the Maya world, while still leaving gaps that complicate efforts to reconstruct shifting political structures, conflicts, or ideological developments shaping the city's trajectory. Archaeological evidence shows that Palenque's rise was neither sudden nor uniform. Earlier construction phases reveal simpler architectural forms later enveloped by more elaborate programs, indicating cycles of expansion tied to dynastic ambitions and regional interactions that remain only partially understood, especially given the complex alliances and rivalries among Maya polities of the period. Artifacts uncovered in residential districts demonstrate a daily life blending agriculture, specialized craftsmanship, and ritual duties, with pottery styles and imported materials pointing to trade networks that extended across both highland and lowland regions. Yet the uneven distribution of certain objects implies social divisions whose exact boundaries remain impossible to map with full certainty. As climate data from Lake Shashankanab suggests periods of fluctuating rainfall during Palenque's occupation, the city's water-centered architecture gains added significance. Systems designed to channel, store, and redirect water may have offered both practical resilience and ceremonial meaning, particularly during times when environmental stress shaped regional stability. However, these links remain interpretive rather than definitive. Palenque's artistic tradition stands out for its fluid lines and nuanced expressions seen in stucco sculptures that once adorned temple facades and in carved panels where rulers interact with ancestors and divine beings. Yet even these artworks, rich as they are, invite multiple readings. Scholars continue to debate the precise meanings encoded in certain gestures, motifs, and astronomical references woven into the compositions. Beneath this cultural sophistication lies a quieter question about the mechanisms of political authority across generations. Although inscriptions name rulers and recount notable events, some transitions appear abrupt or sparsely documented, leaving unresolved issues regarding succession disputes, external pressures, or internal reorganizations that may have influenced architectural surges at specific times. As Palenque entered its final centuries, evidence points to changes in construction intensity, demographic distribution, and political influence. Some temples were left unfinished, others show signs of diminished maintenance. The reasons remain debated, blending possibilities of climatic stress, economic shifts, or broader political turbulence rippling across the Maya region. As the city gradually emptied, the surrounding forest reclaimed its plazas and terraces. Roots, vines, and soil enveloped the delicate stonework until its rediscovery centuries later, leaving modern visitors to encounter Palenque as both a remarkably preserved archive and a partially obscured palimpsest, where clues to its past lie scattered across inscriptions, artifacts, and architectural forms, but never coalesce into a single, definitive narrative. In the quiet of evening, when humidity settles and the jungle becomes a chorus of distant calls, the temples absorb the fading light in a way that softens their geometric edges. The site's intricate blend of engineering, artistic refinement, and cosmological alignment feels anchored in the practical realities of its time, yet touched by intentions that remain just beyond complete comprehension. In this interplay between precision and ambiguity, Palenque endures as a place where refined architecture meets the limits of historical clarity, inviting contemplation of how a society, so accomplished in stone, water, and narrative left behind a legacy rich in detail, yet inevitably incomplete, shaped as much by what was inscribed as by what quietly slipped between the surviving lines. Chichen Itza, in the northern lowlands of the Yucatan, where dry forests open into wide clearings and the horizon lingers low beneath a washed, pale sky, Chichen Itza rises in weathered tiers of limestone. Its structures unfold with a deliberate order that binds architecture to celestial cycles, forming a landscape where engineering and cosmological thought appear to move in tandem, partially deciphered yet never fully transparent. At the center stands El Castillo, a step pyramid whose proportions follow mathematical principles encoded in the Maya calendar. Every stair, platform, and angle contributes to a quiet dialogue between stone and the shifting sky. And during the equinoxes, a serpent-like shadow descends along its balustrade with uncanny precision, a phenomenon so carefully timed that it provokes wonder about the observational knowledge required to translate seasonal movement into enduring architecture. Near this central monument stretches the Great Ball Court, immense stone corridors where ancient acoustics still carry through the air. A whisper spoken at one end rebounds clearly to the opposite side, suggesting designers who understood how sound might guide ritual performances or organize gatherings of a scale that exceeds what current archaeological models fully account for. The Temple of the Warriors, with its forest of carved columns and figures bearing shields, blades, and elaborate headdresses, hints at evolving political structures and possibly external influences shaping the city's rise. Beneath its later Toltec-style facade lie earlier Maya constructions, evidence of a place repeatedly reimagined. Each architectural layer preserves traces of shifting intentions, yet conforms to the city's larger spatial logic. The sacred cenote, a deep, natural sinkhole whose green waters once received offerings of jade, gold, ceramics, textiles, and organic remains, embodies another dimension of Chichen Itza's cosmology. Geological analyses reveal that water levels fluctuated across centuries, altering how rituals engaged with the cenote's mysterious depths. Materials recovered from its sediment suggest long-distance trade networks, and a shared belief in watery portals linking earthly space to spiritual realms. Across the site, structures such as El Caracol reveal a distinctive synthesis of architecture and astronomy. The building's spiral interior and strategically placed windows align with significant movements of Venus, implying a close relationship between governance and celestial observation, though the specific rituals, calculations, and decisions shaped by such knowledge remain out of reach. Excavations of residential compounds illuminate a community whose daily life wove agriculture, craft production, and ritual duties together. Specialized workshops produced fine ceramics, shell ornaments, stone tools, and pigments, while isotopic signatures in human remains reveal both local populations and individuals from distant regions. This mixture may have contributed to the hybrid architectural styles that define the site. Yet such hybridity introduces a subtle tension. Though certain buildings display elements associated with Central Mexican cultures, their integration within Maya planning principles suggests adaptation rather than assimilation, complicating efforts to draw direct lines of cultural transmission or political dominance. Environmental research indicates fluctuations in rainfall and groundwater availability impacted the city at various intervals, prompting innovations in water management and possibly influencing ceremonies held at cenotes. But these climatic shifts exist alongside evidence of changing power structures, periods of intense construction followed by phases of stagnation that do not align neatly with environmental data. The picture that emerges is one of multiple forces shaping Chichen Itza's trajectory, rather than a single explanatory narrative. As archaeologists reconstruct fragments of painted murals, carved lintels, and half-eroded monuments, contradictions unfold in the record. Scenes of warfare and sacrifice appear next to depictions of trade, diplomacy, and ceremonial gatherings, painting a portrait of a society capable of both cohesion and conflict. Yet no unified account survives to clarify how authority was organized, how decisions guiding monumental projects were made, or what circumstances fueled the city's eventual transformation. The decline of Chichen Itza unfolds unevenly. Some precincts fall silent, others continue in limited use. These patterns suggest shifting alliances, economic pressures, or evolving ritual needs, though the precise sequence remains obscure. Walking through the plazas at dusk, when the limestone retains the sun's last warmth and shadows spill across the court of 1,000 columns, one senses a complex relationship between movement, ceremony, and observation, as though the site itself were a guide through cycles mirrored in the heavens. The absence of complete inscriptions linking events or rulers forces interpretation to rely on architecture, artifact distribution, and the faint traces of pigments clinging to worn surfaces. Together, these fragments form an incomplete mosaic rather than a definitive history, allowing multiple perspectives to coexist without one fully eclipsing the others. Within this balance between precision and mystery, Chichen Itza emerges as a city attuned to celestial patterns and regional networks, shaped by layered cultural encounters whose depth is difficult to measure, and sustained by beliefs that infuse stone with meanings now only partially legible. It invites modern observers to imagine how knowledge, authority, and ritual once converged here to shape a world whose logic was unmistakable to its builders, yet now reveals itself only in fragments as time stretches the distance between their intentions and our understanding. Tula. Tula rises over the remnants of what was once a formidable Toltec capital, its structures arranged around broad plazas and step platforms that communicate both military discipline and ceremonial ambition. The site's most iconic features, the Atlantean statues, stand atop pyramid B-like towering sentinels, rigid in posture, enigmatic in expression, offering a glimpse into a symbolic world where warfare, iconography, and spiritual authority merged in ways only partially understood today. These massive figures, carved from basalt and assembled in stacked segments, display elaborate headdresses, butterfly pectorals, and atlatls grasped in their hands, their stance conveying roles as standard bearers or symbolic warriors rather than literal architectural supports. Their presence invites questions about the ideological messages perceived by those who climbed the temple staircases beneath them. Whether they represented deified ancestors, elite guardians, or embodiments of ritual authority remains uncertain due to the limited textual record surviving from the Toltec tradition. Around them lies the burnt palace, with its columned halls suggesting a political and ceremonial center where gatherings, administrative acts, and displays of power may once have converged. Yet the scattered fragments of carved pillars and relief panels complicate efforts to reconstruct their full use, forcing scholars to piece together function through architecture, faint traces of pigment, and comparative study. Nearby stands the Kota Pantli, the serpent wall, encircling part of the ceremonial precinct with reliefs of skeletal serpents devouring human figures, imagery at once mythological and political. These scenes suggest narratives of cosmic struggle, dynastic legitimacy, or sacrificial symbolism that must have carried specific meaning for the city's inhabitants. But interpretation demands caution, relying more on parallels with later Mesoamerican traditions than on direct inscriptions, which remain scarce. Archaeological evidence shows that Tula developed through several successive phases, earlier smaller buildings gradually replaced by monumental architecture reflecting expanding regional influence. Obsidian blades, fine ceramics, and shell ornaments discovered throughout the site point to active trade networks connecting Tula with distant regions across Mesoamerica. Yet the precise character of these connections, commercial exchange, diplomatic relations, ideological diffusion, remains debated. Evidence of standardized workshops suggests centralized production of tools and crafted goods, while residential compounds vary in size and layout, hinting at a complex social hierarchy inferred from distribution patterns rather than explicit written records. This tension between centralized planning and uneven domestic evidence allows multiple interpretations regarding how authority was exercised within Toltec society. Environmental studies propose that shifts in climate may have influenced agricultural productivity around the city, potentially affecting its stability in later centuries. Still, these climatic factors must be considered alongside signs of internal transformation. Repurposed buildings, uncompleted construction, and the burning of key structures, all pointing to a multifaceted process of decline rather than a single catastrophic collapse. Comparisons between Tula and Chichen Itza reveal striking architectural parallels: columned halls, warrior imagery, feathered serpent motifs, which suggest cultural connection or influence. Yet whether this link reflects migration, alliance, imitation, or shared symbolic vocabulary remains unresolved due to chronological uncertainties and the difficulty of tracing stylistic transmission without detailed texts. Excavations on the city's periphery reveal domestic zones where pottery styles, hearth placements, and discarded refuse paint a picture of everyday life shaped by craft production, food preparation, and local ritual practices. Even so, these glimpses cannot fully explain how the larger urban system functioned or how decisions regarding monumental construction were enacted. As decline set in, ceremonial zones show evidence of intentional dismantling and abandonment. The burning of major structures suggests conflict, ritual closure, or political upheaval, though the uneven distribution of burn layers implies a gradual, complicated process rather than a singular event. Today, when afternoon light casts long shadows across the plaza and sharpens the outlines of the Atlantean warriors, the stillness conveys both clarity and ambiguity. The statues stand unmistakably deliberate, yet their purpose remains only partly known, shaped by a cultural logic that left few direct explanations. The surrounding architecture, from low-step platforms to fragmented reliefs, forms a landscape where martial symbolism coexists with ceremonial function, speaking through what survives rather than what was written. The absence of extensive inscriptions means interpretation rests on architectural inference, artifact study, and comparative analysis rather than firm historical narrative. And in this quiet interplay between what stands visible above ground and what remains uncertain beneath it, Tula persists as a site where monumental sculpture, shifting political power, and fragmentary archaeological traces converge. It remains at once recognizable for its artistry and elusive in its deeper meaning, inviting reflection on how a society capable of producing such commanding forms could leave behind a story so carefully veiled within the weathered stones of its ceremonial heart. Calakmul. Deep within the dense forests of Campeche, where thick canopies layer shadow upon shadow and the calls of unseen birds echo through towering trunks, Calakmul rises like a silent memory of a once great metropolis. For centuries it lay hidden beneath vines, roots, and soil until modern excavation revealed vast pyramids and extensive residential quarters, suggesting a capital whose scale rivaled the greatest of the Maya world. Yet, despite decades of research, its story remains partly fractured, its grandeur clear, but many chapters still blurred. The site's most dominant monument, known simply as Structure 2, climbs skyward in broad tiers, each level adding weight and meaning to the one beneath. Multiple construction phases are visible in its core, revealing how rulers across generations reshaped and enlarged the structure to assert lineage continuity and political authority. Steep staircases once carried ceremonial processions from sprawling plazas to sanctuaries that hovered above the treetops. Earth below, sky above, creating a vertical axis central to Maya cosmological thought. Nearby, stele carved with intricate glyphs and regal portraits form some of the region's richest historical archives, recording wars, alliances, ritual performances, and political marriages that secured Calakmul's place as the dominant force of what scholars call the Snake Kingdom. Yet erosion, incomplete inscriptions, and missing fragments leave gaps in this royal timeline, inviting interpretation where certainty falters. Archaeological surveys reveal that Calakmul's influence stretched far beyond its ceremonial heart. Networks of sakbiab, raised white roads, extend outward like veins to satellite communities, trade outposts, and strategic points across the surrounding lowlands. This suggests that power here relied not only on military force, but also on infrastructure that shaped communication, labor, and exchange. Still, the extent of centralized control remains a matter of careful debate, as evidence hints at both strong state organization and flexible local autonomy. Residential compounds vary widely in layout. Some elite households cluster around formal courtyards and sit atop elevated platforms near the core, while commoner dwellings lie more dispersed. Yet archaeological traces, workshops, grinding stones, storage pits, and garden beds suggest that households retained elements of self-sufficiency, blurring lines between urban and rural, elite and non-elite. Environmental data from reservoirs, sediment cores, and canal systems indicates that inhabitants engineered sophisticated water management features. Aguadas, channels, catchment basins designed to store vital rainwater during seasonal drought. Over centuries, climate fluctuations and hydrological instability may have stressed these systems, contributing to cycles of growth, tension, and decline. Artifacts recovered across the site, jade beads, obsidian blades, shell inlays, polychrome ceramics, demonstrate broad trade networks linking Calakmul to distant highlands and coastal zones. Yet their uneven distribution across households and tombs hints at shifting access to wealth and shifting power among elites, patterns that do not always neatly mirror the dynastic narratives carved on the stele. At its height, Calakmul shaped Maya geopolitics through its intense rivalry with Tikal. Alliances rose and fell, vassal kingdoms changed hands, and bitter conflicts dominated generations of rulers. But archaeology reveals moments of complexity, times when monumental building continued even as political strength faltered, or when artistic quality declined despite ongoing construction. These contradictions suggest the influence of internal strife, environmental challenges, or evolving trade routes, factors only partially captured in surviving texts. Later centuries show reduced craftsmanship on stele, half-completed architectural projects, and evidence of demographic dispersal. Yet decline was not uniform. Some districts persisted actively even as the ceremonial core quieted. Peripheral excavations show ongoing occupation, implying adaptation, resilience, and community reorganization rather than sudden abandonment. The notion of a dramatic collapse oversimplifies a far more layered process. Today, the forest weaves itself through Calakmul's bones. Roots press into stairways, vines cling to pyramids, and the jungle canopy filters sunlight so that buildings appear and vanish in shifting beams of gold and shadow. Structure 2 still dominates the skyline, a massive stone mountain draped in green, while smaller platforms, courtyards, and causeways stretch outward beneath leaves. Together they speak not only of grandeur but of the labor, planning, and ceremonial order that sustained a kingdom for centuries. Even as inscriptions illuminate kings and conquests, they say little of the thousands who quarried limestone, carried water, shaped ceramics, farmed maize, raised children, and walked the sakbiab by torchlight. Their voices survive instead in pottery sherds, soil chemistry, carbon traces from hearths, fragments from which archaeologists piece together the rhythm of daily life. At dusk, as nocturnal insects begin their chorus and the forest exhales cool air, the pyramids of Calakmul stand as monumental silhouettes against fading light, softened by vegetation, yet still defiantly present. Within this interplay of clarity and obscurity, between what is known and what remains hidden, Calakmul endures as a quiet testament to Maya sophistication and resilience. Its layered histories, hidden stairways, and towering structures invite contemplation of a world where political authority, ecological adaptation, and cosmological belief merged into forms both powerful and ephemeral. Beneath the canopy, in stones etched with memory and vines heavy with time, the city whispers stories that scholarship continues to chase, knowing that some answers may forever remain in shadow. high atop a leveled ridge overlooking the valleys of Oaxaca, where morning fog drifts in slow, pale currents between distant hills, and the light gathers gradually across terrain shaped by human hands. Monte Alban rises with an austere, unmistakable presence. Its vast plazas and tiered platforms appear carved directly from the mountain itself, as though the civilization that built them reshaped the earth before laying a single stone, creating a vantage point from which the surrounding world feels both surveyed and symbolically contained. The Great Plaza stretches outward in deliberate proportion, framed by pyramids, terraces, and elongated platforms that establish a steady spatial rhythm, suggesting a long-evolving architectural vision. Each construction phase layers new structural ideas atop older foundations, forming a sequence that reflects centuries of shifting priorities, yet always maintaining loyalty to the mountaintop's central axis, as if the plateau's geometry served as a silent anchor binding generations together. At the southern end, a massive platform rises sharply, its steep staircases leading to temples that once held ceremonies visible to the entire valley below. Near the plaza's center stands Building J, a peculiar and angular structure whose orientation breaks from the city's main grid. Its arrow-like layout and carved glyphs hint at astronomical or geopolitical significance. But whether it served as an observatory, a monument to conquest, or a ritual marker remains debated, limited by a scarcity of clear evidence. Along the walls of early structures, carved stones known as danzantes display contorted human figures accompanied by glyphic captions, possibly depicting defeated enemies, ritual actors, or ancestral figures. Their stylized forms and enigmatic expressions evoke lost narratives that scholars attempt to reconstruct from fragmentary clues. Yet the meaning of these carvings remains open, suspended between interpretations of warfare, lineage, and ceremony. As Monte Alban grew into a dominant regional center, its inhabitants shaped intricate terrace systems that stepped down the mountain slopes, creating agricultural surfaces that reveal ecological adaptation and sophisticated social organization. The distribution of residential compounds suggests a hierarchical arrangement blending elite courts, artisan barrios, and ritual specialists, individuals whose identities are hinted at in burial goods, but rarely confirmed through explicit inscriptions. Beneath temples and patios lie tombs filled with finely crafted pottery, turquoise mosaics, jade ornaments, and gold work from later phases, objects that trace Monte Alban's far-reaching connections. Yet the variability of these offerings complicates attempts to outline strict social boundaries, indicating a nuanced complexity that resists simple models of centralized authority. Although Zapotec inscriptions appear on stone panels and portable objects, their partial decipherment provides only slivers of dynastic history, leaving names, events, and political relationships shrouded in obscurity. Thus, Monte Alban's long-standing influence across the valleys, visible through shared architectural styles, ceramic traditions, and trade routes, is only partially documented, inferred from patterns rather than explicit accounts. Environmental studies suggest that climate fluctuations affected agricultural productivity over time, yet the city endured for more than a millennium, implying adaptive strategies that balanced terrace farming, water management, and regional exchange networks. Architectural analysis shows that Monte Alban underwent major redesigns during its height, with temples rebuilt atop older ones and plazas expanded or subtly reoriented to reflect evolving ceremonial needs. Still, the constancy of the mountain plateau as the city's foundation creates a sense of continuity that blurs distinctions between ideological change and architectural tradition. In later centuries, evidence points to shifting political priorities. Certain elite structures show reduced maintenance, and some outlying centers gain prominence, implying that Monte Alban's influence gradually dispersed before its eventual abandonment. While the exact sequence and causes of these transformations remain debated, the archaeological record suggests a slow, uneven decline rather than a single moment of collapse. As the population dwindled, some temples were repurposed, others allowed to deteriorate, and once bustling terraces fell quiet, surrendering to encroaching vegetation. Yet the monumental core endured, exposed to wind and sunlight, its longevity a testament to the immense labor invested in reshaping the mountain. Walking the site today, the openness of the Great Plaza and the sweeping views across the valleys evoke a place designed not as an isolated settlement, but as a monumental convergence of ritual, politics, and landscape. Its height offered both strategic oversight and cosmological meaning. And yet, the absence of a detailed written record keeps many aspects of this convergence beyond definitive reconstruction. Scattered glyphs on stone hint at alliances, conflicts, and ceremonial cycles, but incomplete preservation leaves ample room for interpretation. The contrast between the city's monumental order and its fragmentary textual history underscores a striking tension. The precision of its architecture set against the ambiguity of its narrative. As dusk settles over the ridge and shadows lengthen across the plaza's stone surfaces, Monte Alban embodies a quiet equilibrium between what is visible and what remains elusive. Its terraces and platforms form a landscape where centuries of construction, ritual, and governance once intertwined, but now speak only through the contours of the mountain and the deliberate arrangement of carved stones, their meanings lingering in outline rather than certainty. In this enduring balance between clarity and silence, the city stands as a testament to a society that sculpted a mountain into a ceremonial world, leaving behind a legacy that invites contemplation, not through explicit records, but through the measured forms and distant horizons that still define its ancient summit. Mitla, in the arid valleys of Oaxaca, where the sun falls clean and unbroken across low hills, and the land seems reduced to three essentials: earth, stone, and the wide blue sky, Mitla emerges with a severity that belies the astonishing precision embedded within its architecture. Its palaces, assembled from thousands of painstakingly carved stones, interlock into mosaic facades so exact that mortar was unnecessary, the stones embracing and supporting one another across centuries. These geometric surfaces, unmatched anywhere else in Mesoamerica, feel less like ordinary construction and more like a deliberate quest for permanence through strict order and skilled craftsmanship rather than sheer monumental volume. For generations, this place has occupied a threshold between worlds. Later traditions would describe it as a gateway for ancestral spirits, but the archaeological record suggests a more complex convergence. Ritual authority, lineage power, and governance intertwined within a landscape of courtyards, chambers, and walls whose step-fret motifs, interlocking bands, and lattice-like grids are both decorative and symbolic. Yet the exact meaning behind these designs remains elusive, suspended in silence by the absence of surviving written explanation. Within the columned halls, monolithic pillars bear wide stone lintels cut from single limestone slabs. They open onto rooms where red pigmented walls once enclosed ceremonies, perhaps overseen by noble lineages or ritual specialists who used architecture as a stage for power and memory. The sheer mass of the carved stones, some weighing tons, implies coordinated labor that contrasts with the otherwise intimate scale of the site. Excavations reveal that Mitla's story reaches far deeper than the elegant palaces now visible, with older structures existing beneath newer phases, evidence of long occupation, repeated remodeling, and continuous ritual adaptation. Transitions between periods blur, not because of absence, but because later builders reworked earlier foundations with care, folding past into present. Below ground lie tombs lined with finely dressed blocks and decorated with the same mosaics seen above, suggesting a conceptual bridge between the worlds of the living and the dead. Yet the uneven distribution of these tombs complicates attempts to identify who was buried here and what roles they held in society. In the absence of inscriptions, scholars must read hierarchy through walls and spatial organization, rather than through names or histories carved in stone. The mosaics themselves, composed of thousands of individually shaped pieces fitted into long panels, expose a visual language of extraordinary discipline, a grammar of geometry capable of sustaining continuous patterns without break. While some motifs echo symbols found in codices or ceramics, Their scale and repetition hint at meanings that extend beyond mere ornament. Perhaps cosmological cycles, lineage sovereignty, or territorial memory, although the evidence remains too incomplete to confirm a single interpretation. Surrounding the ceremonial core, traces of everyday life emerge: workshops, hearths, discarded tools, revealing a community engaged in craft production, agriculture, and trade. Obsidian blades, ceramic vessels, and shell ornaments connect Mitla to distant highland and coastal networks, yet the monumental precision at its center suggests a significance beyond that of a common settlement. The valley's semi-arid environment demanded careful management of water. Though Mitla lacks the vast hydraulic systems seen elsewhere, cisterns, channels, and proximity to springs show an intimate knowledge of landscape and resource balance. How this shaped power and ritual authority remains a question still open. As the Zapotec state fluctuated through expansion and decline, Mitla appears to have retained its ceremonial importance, perhaps as a regional administrative seat, perhaps as a sacred enclave. Distinguishing political from spiritual functions proves difficult because architectural phases overlap and texts remain absent. When Mixtec influence entered the region, new artistic elements merged into the older geometric logic. Carved lintels and modified floor plans demonstrate cultural conversation rather than replacement. The visual order persisted, absorbing new ideas while honoring ancestral forms. Colonial intrusion in the 16th century brought abrupt transformation. Spanish structures were erected directly atop earlier platforms, burying sections of the archaeological record and complicating modern attempts to reconstruct the pre-contact layout. Still, enough of the original palaces remain that one may walk among them and sense the old logic of space. As sunlight moves across the valley walls, mosaics shift subtly, one moment sharp and illuminated, the next muted and shadowed, as though crafted not just for stability, but for the slow drama of changing light. While legends long framed Mitla as a portal for souls, archaeology approaches such ideas cautiously. The architecture aligns with broader patterns of elite burial, rather than providing definitive proof of one singular religious identity. Yet the fusion of mosaic-rich chambers and carefully engineered tombs speaks of ritual frameworks where architecture became memory, stone assembled into lineage, death embedded into design. Unlike many contemporaneous cities, Mitla bears no towering pyramids, no vast ball courts, no sprawling inscriptions. Its authority rested instead in controlled, enclosed rooms where governance and ritual converged quietly, emphasizing precision, repetition, and measured form over spectacle. Over time, population movement, regional transformation, and the disruption of indigenous structures led to gradual decline. Still, the mosaics held fast, weathered edges softening but refusing collapse, anchored by craftsmanship so exact that each block continues to support its neighbor. Today, under the shifting sun, patterns flare briefly with brilliance before fading back into stone, Mitla whispering rather than proclaiming, offering glimpses of a society that expressed meaning through geometry rather than soaring heights. Its messages survive in carefully laid stones whose purpose is partly known, partly lost, suspended between revelation and silence. Here, artistry, ritual intent, and cultural endurance converge in forms both disciplined and mysterious, inviting us to contemplate a valley where pattern itself became memory, an enduring script written not in words but in stone. Oxmal rises in the Puc Hills of Yucatan, where low undulating ridges stretch across the horizon and afternoon heat settles in shimmering bands over the scrublands and thorny vegetation. Out of this landscape the city emerges with a refined architectural harmony, its proportions balanced and deliberate, its buildings constructed from finely dressed limestone blocks fitted so precisely that centuries of wind and rain have barely shifted the carved patterns still visible across their facades. Here stonework becomes a statement of worldview, geometry, cosmology, and symbolism woven seamlessly into architectural form. The Pyramid of the Magician dominates the approach with its unusual oval foundation and steep rounded profile, rising in softly curving tiers that differ markedly from more angular Maya pyramids. Later legends, recorded long after Oxmal's decline, speak of magical construction completed in a single night. Yet archaeological excavations reveal something more complex. Successive temples layered one atop another, each encasing the last, suggesting evolving ritual needs and a continuous effort to preserve the pyramid's singular silhouette. Its orientation appears tied to celestial events, possibly Venus cycles or solar alignments marking seasonal transitions, reflecting the astronomical awareness embedded throughout the city. Beyond it lies the nunnery quadrangle, enclosing four intricately ornamented facades around a broad courtyard. Each structure displays elaborate mosaic friezes of latticework, serpent imagery, masks, and geometric motifs, repeated yet never identical, implying a coded symbolic vocabulary whose complete meaning remains elusive despite parallels found across other Puk sites. Scholars debate whether this quadrangle served administrative, ceremonial, or cosmological functions, for its design suggests layered purpose, but the absence of explanatory inscriptions keeps interpretation suspended between possibilities. Further along an elevated terrace stretches the governor's palace, one of Uxmal's most commanding constructions. Its facade extends more than 100 meters in length, aligned with astronomical precision to the movements of Venus, underscoring the city's engagement with celestial order in matters of both ritual and governance. Beneath its friezes, patterns of stylized rain god masks, celestial symbols, and complex stonework, lie traces of multiple construction phases, evidence that rulers modified and expanded the structure over time, balancing inherited forms with shifting ideological priorities. Nearby stands the House of the Turtles, distinguished by a ring of carved shell shapes crowning its upper molding. Though modest compared to grander temples, its symbolic decoration hints at associations with water, fertility, or mythic origins of the earth. Interpretations offered cautiously, for textual evidence is scarce. Across Oxmal, the Puk mosaic style reaches its most refined maturity, stone veneers cut into precise units and assembled into intricate rhythmic patterns. Yet despite such artistic sophistication, the city left behind only fragmentary glyphs, brief ruler references or calendrical markers, insufficient to reconstruct political history or fully define the authority behind these enduring constructions. Archaeological study suggests Oxmal flourished during a time of active regional interaction and relative environmental stability. Still, with no rivers in the surrounding terrain, water management was essential. Systems of chaltuns, bottle-shaped cisterns carved into bedrock, and natural depressions used as reservoirs illustrate ingenious adaptation to seasonal rainfall. This dependence, however, may help explain cycles of growth and decline, visible in unfinished buildings and lightly modified structures along the city's periphery. As workshops producing stone tools, pottery, and shell ornaments reveal, domestic life blended craft, agriculture, and ritual practice. Distribution patterns of goods indicate social stratification, elites likely occupying elevated platforms near ceremonial cores, though the nature of governance remains uncertain without narrative inscriptions to clarify hierarchy and power. At its height, Oxmal expanded across neighboring hillsides, integrating subsidiary temples and palaces into a larger ceremonial landscape visible from afar. Decline came gradually rather than abruptly. Maintenance faltered, population dispersed, construction slowed. Climate shifts, including regional drought episodes, correspond loosely with these changes, though evidence resists a single cause explanation. Political, economic, and environmental pressures likely intertwined, leaving behind an incomplete but compelling archaeological record. Even as vegetation reclaimed portions of the site, the core monuments endured, thanks in part to the Puk technique of using cut limestone veneer over rubble cores, a method that preserved facade detail long after habitation ceased. Today, as light moves across the friezes of the governor's palace and shadows settle into the carved recesses, Uxmal conveys a quiet sense of precision and intention. Patterns reveal themselves gradually, Walking through courtyards, ascending stairways, circling the bases of temples becomes a process of deciphering stone rather than reading text. With few inscriptions to anchor its monuments to specific narratives, knowledge of Oxmal rests on architecture, material pattern, and comparative study, leaving room for multiple readings of how cosmology, governance, and daily life intertwined in this hilltop city. And in the stillness of early evening, when heat fades and the terraces fall into soft shade, Oxmal invites contemplation of a civilization that expressed order not through written declarations, but through enduring geometry, balanced, rhythmic, and intentional, holding its meanings just beyond certainty, where scholarship meets mystery. Tanina. Tanina stands high in the Chiapas highlands, where steep ridges sink into mist-filled valleys and shifting drafts of warm and cool air drift constantly through the slopes. From this mountainous rise emerges a city built not outward but upward, an ancient seat of power defined by terraces and platforms that climb the hillside like steps toward the sky. Its great acropolis stretches in ascending levels, nearly 80 meters above the surrounding plain, forming a monumental dialogue between stone and landscape. Here the terrain itself becomes architecture, and architecture becomes a deliberate ascent through space, ritual, and authority. Movement through Tanina begins at broad lower platforms and proceeds upward through ever-tightening terraces. Each level holds temples, residences, ceremonial courts, shrines, and open spaces linked by staircases that guide processions along a planned spiritual and civic route. Yet the structural logic behind this vertical organization remains partly veiled. Many buildings survive only in fragments, and inscriptions are far too scarce to fully explain the hierarchy of spaces or the meanings behind their arrangement. But the carved monuments of Tanina offer a rare window into its ceremonial and political character. The site preserves one of the richest sculptural traditions in the Maya world: stele, relief panels, and freestanding statues portraying rulers, warriors, prisoners, and gods. They blend sacred symbolism with recorded events, though the erosion of some glyphs and shifts in artistic style over successive periods leave gaps that scholars must bridge through comparative study and cautious interpretation. On plastered facades and carved walls stand scenes of bound captives, high-ranking nobles in elaborate regalia, and beings tied to cosmic cycles. Imagery that points toward a society steeped in ritual spectacle and martial display, though every scene contains layers of meaning that resist exact translation. Midway up the mountain lies the city's ball court, flanked by monuments showing sacrifice, transformation, and mythic renewal. These suggest that the games played here carried cosmic weight, functioning not merely as sport, but as reenactments of balance between life, death, and political power. Yet without fully preserved glyphic narratives, the details remain inferred rather than certain. Archaeological layers reveal that Tanina expanded gradually over centuries. Early structures were swallowed by later additions that pushed the acropolis higher, indicating a continuous yet adaptive urban development. Differences in masonry, style, and workmanship from terrace to terrace suggest that construction involved multiple factions or lineages, complicating any attempt to define a single governing ideology. Below and around the ceremonial core lie residential compounds marked by pottery fragments, grinding tools, hearths, and agricultural implements. These remains speak of everyday labor, farming, food preparation, craft production, and hint that proximity to the Acropolis reflected social rank. Yet the terrain's steepness and the uneven distribution of house sites obscure the finer details of community organization. Environmental studies show that Tanina's position offered both advantages and challenges. Fertile valleys spread below, and high ground offered defense, while terraces and drainage channels reveal careful environmental management. Still, how changing climate or resource pressure may have shaped the city's fate remains only partially visible in the archaeological record. Interaction with regional polities, particularly Palenque, appears in records of conflict, shifting alliances, and monuments celebrating victory. But incomplete inscriptions at both sites obscure the full story. Over time, construction slowed, elite spaces changed function, and population decreased unevenly. Some terraces maintained while others fell into neglect. Abandonment unfolded gradually, shaped by intertwined political tensions, social changes, and environmental pressures rather than a single collapse. As the city receded, vegetation took root among the stones, softening edges and cloaking lower terraces while upper structures remained as silent watchers over the valley. Today, sunlight moving across the stepped heights reveals Tanina as both clear and uncertain, an architectural declaration of ambition, yet wrapped in the silence of missing voices. Sculpted panels speak of power, ritual, and cosmological order, while collapsed roofs, faded pigments, and broken glyphs guard what they no longer fully reveal. Climbing the Acropolis feels like ascending through layers of time, each terrace holding pieces of a narrative that erosion and time have scattered. In what survives and in what has vanished, Tanina becomes a landscape of grandeur and mystery, its meaning assembled from fragments like an unfinished story. A city forged in dialogue with its mountain remains poised between the visible and the lost, inviting us to imagine the full world that once pulsed across its terraces, now preserved only in stone, shadow, and the puzzle of history.